Hello, this is Sophia Yang. I'm one of the filmmakers of this documentary, and I came from a family of Chinese immigrants.
My name is Katie, and I'm one of the filmmakers for this documentary. I come from a family of Korean immigrants.
In this documentary, we want to discuss the American dream and how it is different for everyone, including our family members, ourselves, strangers, and our friends.
首先呢，是我的姐姐辛辛苦苦的在当时的时候申请我们全家十几年，然后为了我们不辜负她的希望，来到美国来打拼我们的事业，然后为美国做出一小部分的贡献。也为我们的家族增一点光彩，所以我们决定就来美国了。
Why? There was no reason for me because that wasn't my choice to come to America. It was my parents' choice, and I just had to come along. And they wanted to have a better life. I guess that's my guess. For our family to have a better life in America, that's probably one of the most important commitments that they made.
Immigrants come to America for various reasons, but it's well known that many do so to achieve a better standard of living for themselves and their families.
我目前为止到美国已经来了10年，当初的一到美国呢，我就投资餐饮事业，然后至今为止呢，为我们的美国投资了数十家的餐饮事业，也为我们的家族，为我们的国家增添一些光与彩。
Accomplishment have been made in America. Went to high school, graduated from high school, went to University of Georgia, major in interior design. After graduating 4 years of college, I got a job in interior design company. Worked there for about 10 years, in between two companies. I was junior designer at first, and then later I went up to senior designer, and then I got married. I got 2 kids. I stopped working because I had no one to take care of my kids, so I was full-time mom, and I was taking care of the kids, and my kids are now in high school, getting ready to go to college.
After my family and I immigrated to the US, my brother and I were separated from our parents and we lived with our cousins. It was very hard for me as a child, but I was very grateful for their presence, and they molded the person I am today. My parents at this time worked day and night, every single day, and finally, their efforts all paid off. We are now in a great community with our own property. My brother successfully graduated from UGA, and I have received many opportunities as a student, such as enjoying dance, doing art, being in a good school, and just enjoying life in general.
Although I wasn't a part of the actual struggle to finding the American dream, I am still a product of my grandparents' long journey. Because I'm the result, I fully understand what my grandparents and parents went through in order to be here in the US and to restart their life from scratch in order to provide us with the best possible life. Now, me and my family members, we all have better access to education, to our workplace, and all the children have infinite potential for their future careers and interests. Of course, there will be struggles in the future, but we keep our grandparents' journey as our motivation, and it really makes us want to repay them back for the chance that they have given us.
Needless to say, achieving the American dream is an amazing thing. But how hard is it, really?
In this third period, immigrants left because Mao's policies led to widespread famine and persecution of many people, including intellectuals. Life got even more desolate in the 1950s and 60s. The Great Leap Forward, Mao's campaign to industrialize the country, caused one of the worst famines of the 20th century. Soon after, Mao launched the Cultural Revolution, a campaign to purge the country of everyone deemed Western or bourgeois, including students, professors, and doctors. The revolution was violent and bloody. This changed the makeup of who left China. Those who had the means to and were willing to risk their lives fled. And here's journalist John Pomfret, the former bureau chief of the Washington Post in China, to explain why this was so important.
The push factor from China was the chaos, the political backbiting, the attacks on Western education that were being carried out by Mao Zedong and the Communist Party. And that pushed huge numbers of Chinese to vote with their feet by going to Hong Kong and then getting access to the United States through family reunification.
Migrants illegally crossing the Mexico-U.S. border, there's now a growing number of Chinese nationals who are traveling halfway across the world, transiting through a dozen countries to make it to the border and into America. Leaving China was a decision Kevin felt he had to make to avoid what he called punishment for speaking out against corruption. He says he was jailed twice and allegedly mistreated by authorities. His family is still in China. That's why we're hiding his identity.
What was the biggest risk to staying?
I'll be going to jail.
You would go to jail?
I will be go to jail. Yeah, of course.
According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, at least 4,300 Chinese migrants have been caught crossing the southern border illegally in the past 5 months alone, more than double the total for all of last year.
My parents immigrated from Vietnam to here during the Vietnam War. So my dad, he came originally from China in Guangdong near Hong Kong. And during the Vietnam War, he escaped from China through Vietnam and all the way through Malaysia as a boat person. So he went through a lot with his family and his 4 older sisters and his 2 parents. My dad and the rest of his sisters decided they wanted to go to America and really let their kids live the American dream. And he was very adamant about wanting to stay in America, seeing it as this wonderful country full of opportunities. So he went here when he was 21, and he had to lie about his age to be able to go to an American high school. He went to San Jose High School, which is very close by, and he also graduated from San Jose State. And he really took his education seriously because he really wanted to provide for his family. And after everything was great, he had a good job. He went back to Vietnam, and that's where he met my mom. And my mom immigrated here, left everything she knew back in Vietnam, and here we are.
From about 1908 to 1924, some women moved from their home countries to Hawaii to work on the sugar and pineapple plantations and marry men based upon an exchange of photographs. These arranged marriages were a common practice amongst the Japanese, Okinawan, Korean, and other Asians in Hawaii. These women were known as picture brides. Now, these brave women were willing to leave their families and all that was familiar to begin a new life in a new country. And they would take on all of these challenges with men whom they only saw in a photograph. Often they would meet for the first time at the immigration station where these brides arrived in Hawaii.
The sad thing about the American dream is that even if you risk your life to come to the US, to this amazing country filled with opportunities, you still have to face its hate and the struggles.
미국에선 어플라이를 할 때 기본적으로 너는 비자 스폰서가 필요하냐, 필요하지 않냐 이런 거를 체크하는 부분이 있었는데 체크를 해가지고 제출을 했던 회사들은 그냥 모조리 연락이 안 왔고요. 리스크를 지는 것보다 내국인 중에 잘하는 사람을 뽑는 게 나을 것 같다라는 생각이 좀 들더라고요. 어떤 대학생들이든 다 할 수 있는 것들 말고 정말 나밖에 못하는 이 세상에 나 아니면 할 수 없는 그런 기술을 만들어내는 게 정말 중요하다고 생각합니다. 미국인들은 취업이 안 돼도 얼마든지 천천히 지원을 하고 외국인 입장에서는 정말 한정된 시간 안에서 취업을 성공을 해야 되다 보니까 전쟁터죠. 죽지 않으려고.
Well, I'd say it's sort of like a mix of emotion because on the one hand, I am very grateful for like my parents and I know how hard they've worked to get here, so I'm very appreciative of that fact. And I also do like the American culture in terms of how it is more accepting than a lot of traditional Asian cultures, which are very typically conservative and there's like not a lot of freedoms. You have to be very traditional in terms of like respect and just like obeying and obedience and all of that. But at the same time, obviously, there's a lot of xenophobia and xenophobia in America, and even though it is seen as sort of like the American dream and like such like an amazing foreign place to people in Asia, once you get here, you're faced with things and a bunch of like criticisms, such as, for example, the model minority myth, where you're expected to be performing very well just because you are Asian, and also just things such as, say, affirmative action. I know that's very controversial, and then there's that lawsuit going on right now. But I think also in America, especially because of the political relations between the US and China, there's a lot of like sensitive areas for a lot of like other Chinese people in terms of like, even though you know that the Chinese government is not good, a lot of times you just feel like you have to support it in a way because of the underlying like xenophobia that's present when people are criticizing the Chinese government, or whenever the word or like anything relating to China comes up. There's just a lot of like as soon as you mention it, people will just immediately be like, oh, but what about the Chinese government? What about their like human rights violations and all of that? And it just feels like it's very hard sometimes to live through that. But I'm also very appreciative of the community here, especially in our area where there's a lot of Asian people, and yeah.
For the most part, I think I enjoy living in America as an Asian person compared to living in China. I'm presented with a lot more opportunities, and I think my parents are able, due to like the opportunities America provides as compared to China, my parents are able to reach a more financially stable status and are more capable of supporting my hobbies and living like a more leisurely lifestyle and giving me kind of and supplying me with all my wants and obviously needs. And also some cons. One con is specifically is that although I am living in a primarily white area, I often find myself and others kind of creating our own group of kind of cultural groups, essentially, where people I often hang out with, I find, are also Asian like me. And there's this like sort of seclusion of the white people and the Asian people in a way. And I think this scenario often leads to sort of like racism, as there's like a lack of interaction between those two groups of people, and the people will like start having like putting like you on like stereotypes, like all Asians are good at math, those kind of stereotypes, and which is a very unhealthy and unethical way of doing things, and they're also like being told like racial slurs, and just because it's not for like any ill intentions, but they just think it's like a joke and it's funny, which is a little kind of disheartening and a little it just makes you feel a negative way. So, but for the most part, I think living in America is definitely, there's a lot of cons. Not cons, a lot of pros.
The majority of immigrants come to America for one commonly shared reason through difficulties. The stories and background are all different. There are immigrants who received an education and were able to get a degree to work at jobs that required a special education. And there are also immigrants who couldn't get an education and were among the percentage of immigrants that started their own business through networking and persistent hard work, or pursue other jobs without an education.
But one thing for certain, the stories of the American dream will never fade away in this country and forever change the lives and fate for the many people today and the future.